Inshallah, we'll get started then. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulil kareem wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'een. Amma ba'd. Dear attendees, welcome to the second part of the webinar of Muslim finance careers. We're going to be focusing on Islamic finance in this one, but we'll still have some room for Q&A at the end if you have some other questions. We'll start off with a quick introduction to the IFA, starting with our vision, a world in which wealth building is divinely inspired, equitable, and seamless, with no one being left behind in our pursuit of happiness. And the way we do that is we conduct our financial dealings, or help people conduct their financial dealings, in a way that is in line with the Sharia, through education and advice. And hopefully, in turn, as Sheikh Sajid likes to say, we end up with a paradise-centric activity. So that's that. If we can move on to the next slide. Here are some of our services. So we do all the way from consultancy to research and development. We've got Sharia, Zakat and Waqf certification. And most importantly, or at least for me as the podcast host, number 10, we've got knowledge building and skill development. So you must have seen our recent podcast with Sheikh Fuad Abdu has recently come out on the topic of Zakat. So it's a very, very good watch. I really recommend that one. But yeah, here's some of the things we do. And again, if you have any questions, you can always reach out to us on our website or our email. Next slide, please. Yep, here's just a quick teaser. So we've got another event coming up very soon, which is Faith at Work. I'll let Ustadh Umer talk about this at the end, but it's something to keep your eye on. And with that said, I'll hand it to Ustadh Umer to start the webinar. And please do take notes, handle your questions yourself through the Q&A function, but I'll see you at the end. Jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Omair, jazakumullah khair. You may want to, I guess, flip the screen so it's just me rather than the slide showing. Maybe a bit easier, otherwise everyone's going to be focusing on, my picture and Dr. Sal's. Okay, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Wassalatu wassalam ala ashraf al-anbiya al-mursaleen, nabiyina Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Okay, I've got Omair. Hopefully everyone can see me rather than Omair as the as a spotlight.
We can see you.
Perfect. Okay. All right, good. So alhamdulillah, look, so this question of getting into a career in Islamic finance, there's a few different things, and I want to go through them all, inshallah, today, just to help people. And we'll have Q&A, and we've got some general Q&A as well. I get asked quite often, look, I'd like to work in Islamic finance. What's the best path? And so there's two things. One is if you want to work in Islamic finance in the UK, or if you want to work in Islamic finance anywhere. When it comes to the UK is quite a small market in terms of the different types of companies that are involved in Islamic finance. Now, those of you who are familiar with kind of the IFA's position and my own position on Islamic finance, we take a position of trying to meet the higher aims of the Sharia. So it's an even smaller circle of companies. But let's just for the sake of this discussion, and I say that with a heavy caveat, it's not an endorsement of companies like Al Rayyan or Gatehouse, etc., etc. But let's say we take the entire spectrum of Islamic finance, what's considered Islamic finance. In the UK, you have very limited numbers. You've got kind of the banks, so Al Rayyan, which isn't really doing any business in the UK. You've got Gatehouse, and now you've got a new player on the books, which is called I think Dubian. I'll get the full name inshallah. It's marketing itself under the name Nomo, Nomo, right? And these are kind of banking. Then you've got Arab Banking Corporation, ABC. You've got BLME Bank of London, Middle East. And these aren't retail. These are for kind of larger corporate deals. Then you've got a number of fintechs. You've got Wahid is in that space. Curate Capital is in that space. FIDA, Nesta. This is in that space. You've got Crowd to Live, Way Home, Halo. And these do Islamic finance products, even though they may not necessarily market themselves as an Islamic finance company. For example, Way Home or Halo. You also have Nesta. I don't know if I mentioned them. Nesta, which again does financing. We've got Cardus. So what I would say, if somebody wants to enter an Islamic finance, they need to be very clear what is it that they want to do? Is it that they want to, and Islamic finance has different areas. Islamic finance actually cuts across different, you know, different business lines, right? So, for example, you'll have a legal element to Islamic finance. You have um, like a financial element. You have a product development element. Then you've got something like marketing. You've got, if you take out, so that's not Islamic finance specific. You'll have from a Sharia side, Sharia compliance, for example. You also have kind of on the credit side, right? So this is structured products, and that will cut through. Now, and what I'm going to do, I'm going to try and bring up a slide. Actually, I was just thinking I should make it help for the sake of this discussion. So there's lots of different areas in which Islamic finance can cut across, and you want to kind of see what area do you want to be in. So sometimes I speak to lawyers, people who are in, who want to seek a legal career, and they say, "Well, we'd like to focus on Islamic finance, or we'd like to get into the Islamic finance part of law." But it's important that if you have some view of what you want to do within Islamic finance. Why that's important is because there's no kind of general Islamic finance as a job, right? There's lots of different elements, and depending on what you want to get into, then you can seek out a career accordingly. Right. So if we take, give me 1 second, let me see if I can bring this up, and then it'll actually help with some of this. Actually had it open and I closed it when I was Jade. Okay. So my advice always is that when you look at getting into Islamic finance in the UK, I would say actually go and work in the conventional space, because none of the Islamic finance operators, I can say that fairly comfortably across all of them that I know, will give you the training and development that will help you develop as a professional. Other than the Sharia compliance side, I'll come back to that. If you want to work in the Sharia side, if you want to become a accomplished professional, you won't get that training in Islamic finance institutions versus your conventional institutions. Now, this makes a big difference because you may want to start working, or if you want to get better at Islamic finance, you may have to work in a conventional bank. Now, this becomes dangerous because you're working now in a riba-based institution. And when I've spoken to different scholars on this and experts on this, the answer has been you're allowed to work in those institutions if you have a clear niyyah that you want to learn to develop Islamic finance. Now, this is really important because if you're going to enter into a bank, for example, and work there, you are working in an impermissible environment. And you have to be so careful that if you're working in there, that you don't allow it to become part of you. It enters your heart, and then suddenly you're okay with everything that's going on. There are so many people who say, "Yeah, I just want to work in it for now, and then I'm going to, move out and work somewhere else," but they never do. And then time flies, and subhanallah, they're still there. And that's dangerous. So if you are going to take the approach that you're going to work in a conventional space to learn, then if it's something which is clear, like a bank, I would say that you should only do it if you put certain protections in place. So, for example, anyone who's working in a bank and they say that they're going to leave, you should be really part of a Jama'ah, or be attached to some scholars, or be attached to some regular circle of learning, right? It may sound kind of, well, what's that got to do with my day job? It's because you will need that to anchor you in terms of how you continue. If you don't have that anchoring, you're going to just get deeper and deeper into the finance space as it is. And that's not something, subhanAllah, that we would ever advocate. You've got to have a clear mission that you're only going there to study to get out, inshallah. Right? So I can't find the slide right now, but so Islamic finance, it cuts across banking, asset management, insurance, private equity, venture capitalism as kind of businesses. And in each of these businesses, you will find roles that you can do. Now, traditionally, asset management has been a big area of Islamic finance. So if you look at large scale projects, these come under asset management deals. What we would call, large kind of capital market deals where they would be financing a skyscraper, etc., etc. Now, there's no Islamic finance company that you can go in and learn all of this stuff. This is why I'm saying you'll have to go into the conventional space, learn it, and then move across into an Islamic finance-based organization. But you have to have those caveats in place where you are regularly attending a circle of knowledge, or you are close to scholars, or you have people that are going to keep you grounded. In the UK, the development's not there, unfortunately, because of the size of the market here. If you wanted to go abroad and you're willing to go abroad, then Malaysia is a massive market, Qatar, Middle East, etc. I don't necessarily advocate anyone from a deen perspective moving to Dubai, but you will have quote unquote Islamic organizations or Islamic banks there. Again, most of them would probably not pass IFA's kind of position on products, but they are under the umbrella of Islamic finance. So my general advice in this is find an area that you want to kind of become a specialist in, develop yourself, get into the conventional space, get into a good company in the conventional space, learn, really develop yourself in that field. Alongside this, whilst you're developing your career, start to learn about Islamic finance principles. I would say actually learn about basic principles of Islamic jurisprudence and then Islamic finance after that. When it comes to Islamic finance, people generally kind of just get into Islamic finance, or they'll see everything through, or they study Islamic finance in its finished form. And the problem with that is that then determines how you see everything. You will see the entire market through existing structures. Rather, it's better to take a principles-based approach where you try and understand the rules of fiqh which are applied, and then you can apply them to any context. Because we're now moving to a place where things are moving very quickly, and the traditional understanding of Islamic finance or these existing structures aren't necessarily applicable in the same way. And we need to move the market. So we need to have people who understand principles and apply them in the environment that we're in. So just to conclude this part of it, find an area that you want to specialize in, go and work in the conventional space. Make sure, depending on what the area is, if it's something which is impermissible generally, then make sure that you are well grounded. If you have this intention that you only want to learn to leave, right? And you take measures around that. Alongside this, make sure that you're keeping up your learning of knowledge, Islamic knowledge. And then once you've done basic principles and basic understanding of fiqh and approach to fiqh, etc., you then can take some courses in Islamic finance. Take this as a process, 5 to 10 years, and at the end of it, inshallah, you'll be much more rounded to be able to walk into any Islamic finance institution and go in and command a higher salary. Okay, this is also important. My own experience was this, that I started my career out working as kind of a training to be an accountant in the public sector. Then I worked at EY, Ernst& Young. I wouldn't enter into the Islamic finance space because I wasn't comfortable with the products that they had. So I continued to work in the conventional space whilst learning about Islamic finance. But actually starting, I actually did a course called Sabil, where we looked at the whole kind of approach to understanding and knowledge. And then I would, in my spare time in the weekends and evenings, be attending courses and doing reading around Islamic finance. and they kind of built up my expertise until I was at a point, alhamdulillah, where I started to get involved in more kind of projects which were Islamic finance based. We started to see startups coming and started engaging with them. I gave voluntary time to Islamic finance based projects to kind of build up my experience. And then, alhamdulillah, when the opportunity came with Wahid, I had that kind of grounding, the conventional experience, and the Islamic understanding to be able to jump across. So yeah, that's my advice. If you're looking to go abroad, there's different pros and cons in companies. Malaysia, alhamdulillah, it's got a very mature Islamic finance market. It's, there's lots of activity there. And they've got scholars there that you can approach. And if you wanted to do like a master's or something and then stick around, you've got some good institutions in Malaysia for that. Middle East, everyone knows, subhanAllah, as I spoke earlier about moving to somewhere like UAE. Riyadh now, alhamdulillah, is really bustling with activity. They're looking to really grow. And their plan, I think, is something like to double its size in 5 years, which is phenomenal, which means there's lots of activity and there are Islamic based companies there. However, just to be aware that politically in Saudi, they generally don't tend to advertise things being Sharia compliant. Not because they're not Sharia compliant, it just means that if something is marketed as being Sharia compliant, de facto, I mean something which isn't marketed as that is non-Sharia compliant. And obviously, being the birthplace of Islam, this will have issues. So generally across the board, they don't market things as being Sharia compliant. Though there are obviously lots of family offices, lots of companies that do adhere to Sharia principles. And then you've got Islamic banks, example, Al Raji, etc., that do this. But again, the challenge with Saudi would be it wouldn't be, even though people speak in English, the business language is in English as such. Malaysia, business language is English. Emerging market Turkey, they call it participation banking. They're looking to really grow their Islamic finance proposition or participation banking proposition, but it's been slow off the mark. Again, if you don't speak Turkish, it's very difficult because the business language isn't English there. So that has its own challenges. Jade, I think we'll jump into questions if that's okay.
Yeah, that's fine. Jazakallah khair. So we've got a few questions from the form that you sent out last time. We'll rattle through a few through those, and then we'll let the Q&A, the attendees, send some questions in the Q&As and answer them next. That's okay.
Sure.
So the first question, which I think is a terrific question, is: do I need to work in Islamic finance to serve Allah through my career, or to achieve His happiness and His pleasure, or is there any other way I can achieve a meaningful difference?
No, subhanallah. Islamic finance is just a space. You could work in any area, and it comes down to your niyyah. So this course that we're doing, I'm going to touch upon it later, Fiqh of the Workplace, is actually going to cover this, about how you serve Allah in your day job, right? So, subhanallah, that a person that goes out and earns their wealth, if they spend it upon their family with this intention that they're going out to work to provide for them, as long as their work is halal, then they're rewarded for that, right? And a lot of it comes into like, look, don't make this dunya your be all and end all, right? Don't make this dunya your be all and end all. And the Prophet ﷺ told us that whoever makes the dunya their concern, not only will they lose out on the dunya, but they'll also potentially lose out on the hereafter. Whereas the person who makes the hereafter their concern, inshallah, not only will they get the hereafter, but the dunya will chase them. So what this means is that our work, we don't live to work. We kind of work to live, right? And that means that it's got to serve a purpose. Now, for me, I had a larger vision or purpose for me, which was around economic justice and seeking it through, then seeking economic justice or justice overall was through finance. But Islamic finance may not be a passion of yours. It may not be an area that you're interested in. It doesn't mean that if you do any other job that it doesn't hold value, right? It doesn't hold any value. Actually, subhanAllah, go out, do what you're doing. It's an honest day's work. Provide for your family, inshallah. And then you have the rest of the time that you take part in doing other activities that perhaps your passions are more aligned with that bring you closer to Allah Azza wa Jal. Yeah? So it doesn't have to be for everyone. This isn't that you can only serve Allah if you come through finance. Not at all. Everyone's got different passions, different. Someone who's a doctor How can we say that someone who's in Islamic finance is serving Allah better than them? Of course not, right? But even if it's not a job like being a doctor or Islamic finance, even if you're, subhanAllah, doing anything, right, whatever the role may be, if you do it with this intention that it's going to give you a halal risk for you to be able to provide for your family, inshallah, and then any time that you have, you want to serve Allah, this is barakah, man. This is barakah. So I wouldn't worry about saying that you have to serve Allah through Islamic finance. It's only a means for some, not for everyone.
Jazakallah khair for the beautiful answer. The second question I have for you is you've spoken about doing courses and reading into Islamic finance in the weekend, but is there anything else people with no experience or background in Islamic finance can do to get into Islamic finance?
Yeah, so look, one is kind of, like I said, understanding Islamic principles. You should start on a course that teaches you about understanding the framework for the Sharia. That means going through a position of understanding what are our sources of law, understanding the primacy of the Quran, and then the Sunnah, and then ijma and qiyas, right? So a course that teaches you that, and then the evolution of fiqh, understanding the madhahib, all of these things are building blocks into how you understand Islam and then rulings. Now, finance comes under the area of mu'amalat. Mu'amalat is something which is kind of in flux. It's different to ibadat. Ibadat is kind of fixed. You know exactly what it is. Mu'amalat is in flux. There's always new things coming along, right? How do we deal with them, etc. So you need the building blocks to be able to approach these. So taking those from a general finance perspective, I would also say, look, you take an understanding of Islam, kind of Islamic sciences, then often people in Islamic finance, what they don't do is kind of look or read into the philosophical discussions around finance. There's a book called 5,000 Years of Debt, which is really good. It talks about debt and the challenges of debt. Um, Beggar Thy Neighbor is another book, non-Muslim, right, where it talks about debt and interest and the kind of the ill effects of it on society. We should read this type of stuff to understand, okay, the ill effects of the kind of economic system that we're in. So now what you're doing, you're kind of building blocks, putting different building blocks together. And then when you look at Islamic finance courses, whatever they are, you apply the impact of those courses that you do or understanding those products in light of what you've learned from an Islamic perspective and also a social philosophical perspective. So, for example, Adam Smith, he described economics as a moral philosophy, and he speaks about the free hand of the market. Now, he was heavily influenced by Imam Ghazali, right? So when you're starting to understand some of these, the other thing I would also say is that a lot of people kind of enter into Islamic finance, and what they're essentially looking for is, you know, um, capitalism with a topi, right? What that they want to do is earn money and make themselves feel better by earn lots of money, but make themselves feel better by giving it a halal wrapper. Actually, the Islamic approach to the economy is much wider than this. And so why I keep on saying you need to be grounded in understanding the different elements of it. Otherwise, you'll be too skewed and you won't be doing justice to what the Sharia calls to. So understanding the role of charity in Islam, right? The centrality in understanding zakat and how it underpins our economic framework. So this is why I said 10 years, guys. It's not it's not a quick endeavor. So you need to kind of build up your knowledge that way. And, if it's anything to do with, if you hear any talks on wealth, approaching wealth, right, risk, all of these things, you should be trying to understand. There'll be lots of courses that are available, especially online on Islamic finance. I know that Mufti Faraz Adam, for example, he runs some courses through IFG. It's good just to understand the subject, but I would also say rather than just thinking you're going to get your entire learning from that, build up your knowledge base in a systematic way. So I'm saying approach understanding fiqh and then approach understanding economics, right? This is coming from a social perspective. Why? Because as Muslims, we're always balanced. If you look at the kind of isms of the world, capitalism, socialism, and so on communism. Islam sits beautifully in the middle, right? And if you don't have that balance, and the people involved in Islamic finance don't have a balance of understanding all of the other isms, they will allow Islamic finance. And we've seen this Islamic finance actually currently in its current form is more closer pulled towards capitalism because that's the um, kind of the superior ism of the time that we're in, the dominant position. And so Islamic finance reflects that actually, and no, it shouldn't be like that. Islamic finance is much more just, and we need more people, more practitioners who enter into Islamic finance with this holistic approach.
Jazakallah khair, amazing response there. Capitalism with the topi, I'm going to use that one. A follow-up question we have on that is, so someone's been working in Islamic finance advisory in a conventional capacity for over 15 years, but they've just received a deeper understanding of why we should avoid certain areas and the seriousness of this issue. So because of this, they've been looking to get into Islamic finance, but it's been extremely challenging. Should they continue to work in a conventional market while making every effort with the right niyyah? Or is it just better to leave the industry altogether?
Look, I mean, working in the conventional space, if you're in an area that is, um, okay, so let me take it this way. I working in non-permissible environments, non-permissible organizations. So I spoke to the scholars about this, and I kind of got three views, and I'll say that I'll share the three views with yourselves. One view is that it doesn't matter what you're doing. If you're working for a riba-based institution, it doesn't matter if you're a security guard or a cleaner, you can't work there. Haram, haram, haram. Right? Now, this view was more from scholars outside of the UK. They took this view. There was another view, and I've heard this directly from the scholar, and he was a senior scholar's mouth, that it doesn't matter. You can work for banks as long as you do your jobs and you work with integrity. And again, I'd say this is like an outlier view. The main corpus of views that I got from scholars in the UK, which is important because they know our context, is that depending on what you're doing, it's okay, right? So if you're in a role that directly supports either of riba through product promotion, product sales, product development, then this is, you shouldn't be in this role. And you should do your utmost to try and leave or move into a different department. So if you're in something like compliance or even accounting, depends if you're doing financial reporting or internal audit, these will be fine, right? But if you're in something like treasury, this is problematic because you're helping support the riba-based element of it. If you're not in one of these roles, so if you're in one of a role that isn't directly supporting the riba, so you're in compliance or say tax or something, or you're in IT infrastructure, then the scholar said that it's still better for you to leave. It's better for you to leave, but there isn't the same pressure on you. And they said that, look, the Sharia doesn't come to harm people. And if you were to suddenly leave, it may put you in a position with your family, for example, that, makes things very difficult. So you should hate it, you should dislike it, and you should be sincere in your intention to leave. And everyone knows that. People, you can't be like, yeah, I'd like to leave, right? There's so many people, subhanAllah, I speak to in finance. And one example in the past that there have been opportunities for jobs. And I said, listen, guys, you want to get out, there's this opportunity. And they're like, oh, what's the pay? And, if the pay wasn't more or equivalent to what they're on, they weren't willing to leave. So how sincere are you as a person to wanting to leave? Allah protect us from, you know, uh, uh, thinking anything of ourselves. And I only say this as an example. Hopefully, they won't record this bit or pause it or cut it out. When I left my job in conventional, I took a massive salary cut. And for me, it was when we speak about these principles and we say that we're sincere to Allah Azza wa Jal, and we believe in Him and we say that we have tawakkul, when the opportunity comes, why do we not take it? You know? So subhanAllah, it's one of those things that and this is why I keep on saying heavily the caveat. if you are going to work in the conventional space, you really need to put lots and lots of measures in place to protect yourself from it, right? Otherwise, you can't do it and you shouldn't do it because it is an impermissible environment and you will be taking part in the impermissible. If somebody doesn't want to do it or they still don't feel comfortable, alhamdulillah, no issue whatsoever. No issue whatsoever. But if you do take this, because this is reality, if you do want to go in and you're kind of going into the belly of the beast and you're going to want to be like Musa alayhi salam in the house of Fir'aun, then you got to be sincere to that and make sure you've got the protections in place.
Jazakallah khair. Very holistic and profound answer there. Jazakallah khair for that. The next question I have for you is sort of two questions in one. One is how to pivot into Islamic finance from a career in law or IB or asset management, accountancy, etc. And if there are courses to do, what courses do you recommend?
So, okay, I'll start with courses. I mean, look, there's loads of different ones that are available now. I think uh, back it used to be CISI, Chartered Institute of Securities and Investments. They do one on Islamic finance. There used to be a qualification called IFQ. They've stopped doing that. And there's NCF, which is based out of Malaysia. They do courses on this. There's Thai Foundation in the Middle East. So just have a look, and I guess it all depends on what they're going to cover under it and what you want to do. IOFI, which is the main body that kind of sets Sharia standards. So this is the Auditing and Accounting Organization of Islamic Finance Institutions based out of Bahrain. They've just recently kind of done a revamp of all of their courses, and they're going to be coming out, I think, in the next couple of months. It'd be worth doing a course like that with them, because you'll go through the standards, etc., which is going to be, which would be something that I'd recommend. SEMA, they do a certificate on Islamic finance. I'd recommend that. So any of these really, inshallah. There's none that I would say, oh, this is really particularly good over something else. But most of those are going to be Islamic finance from an industry perspective, where you're kind of looking at structures and what's in place. There isn't a course that I've seen that approaches Islamic finance from a first principles basis, i.e., understanding it conceptually and then pushing out. I know, inshallah, the IFA is working on something like this. Oh, great. Just finished PCIF, Sharia, NCF. Great. Yeah. So NCF is a big institution, mashallah. Um, but there's nothing that kind of teaches on a ground up first principles basis. IFA is working on something like this, inshallah, that will help you. Inshallah, I think will be quite groundbreaking in terms of its approach to Islamic finance. And the question before that was, if you're in kind of accounting or law, etc. So if you're a lawyer, try and see if you have any in your departments that work on Islamic finance contracts, and start getting involved in them. Right? Just ask if you can be kind of put on that team, seconded to that department. Start picking up and doing little bits of work. Honestly, for myself, I didn't get paid for any work that I'd done in Islamic finance until I started working for Wahid. I used to voluntarily do it outside of my day job, just so I could learn. So you've got to sacrifice somewhere to be able to pick up. So maybe you got to do some extra work above and beyond any kind of work that you have in your teams. If you're working for a consultancy, they may work on Islamic finance projects, or they may be advising some Islamic finance institutions. Go and see if you can work with them. Go and see if you can spend some time with those clients, etc. That's the main way of doing it. And also, look, if you're an accountant, offering your services to kind of Islamic startups, man, that's something that you can do. The accounting is conventional accounting, but it's for an Islamic finance institution. These would be some of the approaches. Now, look, Riba Free Foundation, again, great guys, lovely, lovely brother there, Umar Khalil, and they're doing great work in helping people stay away from riba. I know that they are planning, inshallah, to have some sort of jobs board. When that goes live, that would be something to look at. So RFF, Riba Free Foundation, that should certainly be helpful once it goes live. I don't have an exact date, but I know that this is something that they're planning.
Jazakallah khair. Just a quick follow-up on your answer. What's your thoughts on Islamic finance roles in conventional banks and institutions, or do you recommend that we should strive to get into Islamic finance institutions specifically?
So Islamic finance windows in conventional. Look, it's better than, if you can, than working in a conventional one within that organization, and it becomes a stepping stone. You may not necessarily be able to jump straight out. So at least if you worked in the Islamic finance window, then from there it'll be easier for you to get into other roles. If you can move into there, then definitely I think I would say it's prudent or sensible to do that.
Amazing. Jazakallah khair. Um, what's your thoughts on the future of Islamic finance in the UK and other countries, and more so any external factors that you think would impact it, such as AI or any other important
Um,
macroeconomic factors?
Look, I mean, technology is a game changer. I think people who want to approach Islamic finance from the technology angle is phenomenal. Um, when I was at HSBC, the head of their retail bank said that their biggest threat were fintechs and startups because you'd have companies starting up that will do parts of transactions that, as a bank, they're large and they can't do. It takes some time now. So you see things like transfer or Wise, as it's called now. You look at the emergence of Monzo, Revolut, everything that they're doing, how quickly they can do it. You want to send payments, you can ping things across. So technology allows you to kind of develop areas of Islamic finance that give you more options. So, for example, part of a transaction in an Islamic finance, when you do a ribawi item, so for example, when you're exchanging money for money, right? So, say I was to exchange with Omair pounds for rupees, if he's got rupees, then this exchange has to be what's called yad bil yad, hand to hand, which is immediate, which is spot, right? Now, if you're doing electronic transfer, there used to be a settlement delay, which would be T plus one or T plus two, T being time and plus one or two, right? Now, through technology, if you can enable that for it to be instant and you have a record, another key thing around Islamic finance is clarity of ownership. Now, through digital records, you're able to establish at any point who owns a product. So technology enables that. So technology is great. So Islamic finance, with the advent of technology, and I'll come to the AI bit, is definitely a huge opportunity for us to take advantage of. It's disruptive by its nature, and we want to disrupt finance. And I would also say we want to disrupt Islamic finance as it's being practiced, which has been based, alhamdulillah, I think 30 years ago when they developed Islamic finance, it had a specific context. But now we need to move it and make it more authentic in what it's doing. I think Islamic finance is going to come to a point where there's going to be a number of players who are pushing genuinely authentic products that the market will gravitate towards versus the kind of general pool of Islamic finance. And there'll still be a market for that. If you look a bit like the HFA and the HMC debate, there's still a market for HFA, people who want it, but the people who really care and are particular would go for HMC. And I think Islamic finance is going to go down that route where you're going to see the emergence of a group or a sector of Islamic finance, which is really purer in terms of what it does. AI, right? The role of AI. Okay, so look, if we look at AI when you're looking at, for example, trading or being able to pick stocks which are Sharia compliant and you're feeding it, then definitely there's a role there. But AI itself, I think we still need to kind of think a little bit more about. I think the long-term impact of AI and what it's going to do to people in terms of dumbing them down and people's reliance on it in terms of information and how I was just thinking about this the other day, subhanAllah, how it is going to diminish people's ability to research and to be able to critically analyze because you'll start to accept as gospel everything that you see. And if you don't have expertise in an area, how will you be able to challenge? At the moment, if you have an understanding of something, you can engage with AI as a tool if you use ChatGPT or DeepSeek, and you'll be able to say, okay, this is relevant for me, this isn't. But if you don't have that, how are you going to be able to do it? So, yeah, AI potentially can help, but also I think there are questions that need to be asked about its overall societal impact.
Jazakallah khair. One of the attendees had a brilliant point that he raised. He mentioned that Muslim Charities Forum has
Yeah,
a job board that they hire finance professionals and they have ways to work into Islamic finance through that. So definitely something to look at.
amazing.
Um,
MashaAllah.
yeah, so one attendee has something important to clarify that they couldn't understand or justify the ethical perspective of working in a bank, i.e.,
Yeah.
conventionally, with good intentions. So it's a difficult decision for them to justify choosing to work in a bank. So could you provide some guidance into that?
Yeah, and again, look, I understand. I really, really have sympathy for that. Um, I've got to be careful how I say this. Let's say, right, that we wanted to develop uh, drones, or you wanted to work or develop some sort of defense capabilities. Now, you'd look to see who has them at the moment, and if you really wanted to develop the best, you'd go and work in the companies that are producing them, knowing that unfortunately the way that they're being used. But if you want to be able to improve and have your own, which are better than that, then you sometimes have to swallow that thing and really think, really ask Allah to forgive you, not allow your heart to be settled in that place, and keep on tying it to the reward that you want from Allah, that why you're taking part in this. And it's not easy. That's why I wouldn't say to everyone, and this isn't the discussion here, but even people who get into politics, it isn't for everyone, nor do you recommend people to get into it. But if someone enters into it because they want to do it to help the Muslims, and they go into it and they know what it's going to be like and all of the stuff, then it may be a decision that they take, subhanAllah, seeking Allah's pleasure. And then their accountability is with Allah as well, right? So if you're not comfortable with doing that, then don't do it at all. I'm not saying to you, I'm not encouraging, I'm not saying to you, you should do that. I'm saying if you want to get into Islamic finance and you want to be able to produce products that are world class and better than conventional, you need to understand how they think, how they structure them, what they do, what the whole journey is. It's like when I speak to scholars and they talk about certain products, they're like, oh, why don't we just do this? Or like say, why don't you just produce something like this? And I say, you can't. From a regulatory perspective, there's these challenges. From a tax perspective, there's these challenges. You're not going to know that unless you've worked in that environment to understand it. But if you're not comfortable with it, no, there's no compulsion on you to go into it. And I understand, I have sympathy for what you're saying. That's why I don't say it's for everyone. But if you do, you've got to do it with this intention that, khalas, you're going to, improve it. Now, just as an example, at the time of Fir'aun, Allah tells us about two people. One is Qarun, and the other is the secret believer. Now, these were two people at the time of Fir'aun, Musa alayhi salam, and Qarun was the one who was really rich, right? And he was the representatives of the Bani Israel, right? And when Allah talks about punishment, He talks about wa Qarun, wa Haman, wa Fir'aun. He speaks about Qarun being punished, right? And he starts with him, yeah? But we also have the secret believer, right? Now, this secret believer, he's been rewarded with paradise. He was in he was in the palace of Fir'aun, but whenever he had opportunity to do some khair, he would do it. Do you not think that he would have seen oppression in front of his eyes that he had to stay quiet about? He would have, right? So he had a higher aim, a higher purpose, and Allah talks about his reward. So that's how sometimes you have to kind of approach these things, that look, if you're there for a mission and then you want to leave, then halas. But if you're not comfortable with it, then of course, don't do it, man. No issues.
Jazakallah khair for the honest answer there. Uh,
Barakallah.
a quick follow-up to a previous question was if one follows your advice in kind of hating it, but with the strong intention and having the, external guidelines and things to stop them and rooting themselves in knowledge. If someone is following all of that, but they still feel that there's no way out of their current, conventional capacity of their role, is it at what point could you say that, maybe it is time to pack in, or do you think one should keep striving and this is just from shaitan and, an opportunity will come up soon?
I mean, it's different for different people. If you're in a position that you can leave, you have the finances that you can go into something else that won't impact your family life like that, and you feel that your family has the iman and tawakkul to bear that with you, then you can do it sooner rather than later. But if not, then it's down to individuals, like really how much they can bear. And I guess things are constantly changing. And you've got to always have this thing about asking Allah for forgiveness and try and give more in charity. This is a general point. We should try and give more in sadaqah to purify our wealth, you know. And that's all you can do. There's no magic answer or no silver bullet to this. Everyone knows, fear Allah as much as you can, and halas, carry on. But constantly check, see if you're sincere to it. Speak to people of knowledge, talk to them, and make sure that your heart is constantly agitated with being where it is.
Jazakallah khair. Mohammed, you have your hand raised. Is it that you want to ask a question live or? Yeah, okay. They
Go
want
for it.
to they want to speak to you. That's right.
Go for it. Yeah, Bismillah.
Assalamu alaikum, can you hear me?
Yeah, wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah, Muhammad. Yes, I can hear you.
How are you, Umar?
Alhamdulillah. How you doing, akhi?
Great, great, alhamdulillah. So I wanted to ask you on that point where my previous question was about ethical justification of working in a bank. And I just wanted to follow up on that.
Of course, yeah, of course, bro.
So it's really hard for me to justify this and explain it not only to myself, but to my parents as well. Like working in a bank, I'm going to be essentially helping them do what they do, which is oppressing society and etc. and the things that
Ah,
follow them. But I've likened it to working in the IDF and essentially committing a genocide, but it's justified because I'm learning the strategies and the drones and the technology, etc., which I can use later against them to rebel against them. But in the process, I'm committing so much sin, I guess you could say. How does one go about that? Like, I understand.
yeah, akhi Muhammad, bro. It's not easy. It really isn't, subhanAllah. And I'm not here to say, like, do it. I really am not. I don't recommend people get into investment banking or getting into finance as a career. I don't recommend it at all, that people in it. I say, no, stay away. It's haram. You won't even be able to get out. But I'm saying that if Islamic finance is your goal, that you want to find a way to come up with products that ultimately help the Muslimin long term, then in this country, this is a way of developing until Muslim organizations are stronger, they have better development programs, they're more well funded, more well rounded, then to kind of learn and develop, then you can, develop yourself through that. Now, it may be that has dropped off, but okay, he's still there, and hopefully he's still there. Um, it may be that you work in a team that isn't directly involved in the riba side of it, promoting riba, but you can at least understand how the structures work. You may be involved in structuring from a legal perspective, so you're not pushing or promoting the product, excuse me, but you're learning it, or you're working with a consultancy that advises them, you know. But it's a difficult, honestly, subhanAllah. Wallahi, I have so much sympathy for what you're saying, and I'm not saying that if you're not comfortable with it, don't justify it. Don't justify it. Find another way, you know. But the advice I got from scholars when I spoke to them was that they allowed it for this reason, you know, that they allowed it for this reason only. But there's so many caveats around it, you know. And you've got to honestly, and like when you understand, most people really do not appreciate the consequence and the gravity of dealing in riba. That's the reality of it. So if you understand that, then you can only approach it in the way that you've said it, Muhammad. How do I do it? How can I do it? But that's a good thing, because if you're there and you have that, if you're working in that environment, you've got to keep it. You got to keep that feeling inside you, because you're thinking, which opportunity will I get out? I need to go in with a game plan and leave, you know? That's all I can say really, Akhi. I can't justify. I'm not gonna sell it to you and say you should do it, because I have sympathy for what you're saying. And I could only wish that we have better organizations that are more developed, more mature, um, you know, and have that kind of large infrastructure that they can take on interns and they can take on training contracts and they can develop people. But we don't, unfortunately, subhanAllah.
Jazakallah khair. Sorry, Mohammed, I know you want to ask follow-up, but we've got some other questions, so maybe another time, inshallah. I've got
Mohammed, just to say, Mohammed, listen, ping me on LinkedIn if you want to have a conversation on it. I'm happy to have it. Like, if there's this thing that's bothering you, then khalas, I'll give you more time, no problem, later.
Barakallah feek, Ustad. A nice forward-looking question we have is, what are the most important problems to work on as an ummah? And is there a best way to serve the ummah in getting out of debt?
So repeat that bit.
So what are the most pressing problems to focus on in Islamic finance, I'm assuming, for in the UK today? And what's the best way to serve the ummah in getting out of debt?
Okay, and you said I say so from an Islamic finance perspective, a big area that's underutilized is around providing finance for small and medium-sized companies to grow and expand. Unfortunately, all the structures that we have are debt-based. What we want is part of the kind of maqsad of the Sharia when it comes to finance is that money circulating in society, benefiting as many people as possible rather than hoarding. And this is why we've been encouraged to invest, for example. What we find is that, say, a Muslim business, he opens up one office or one type of business, and then he can't open a second or a third or a fourth without borrowing money. And so if we could find a way of helping invest into those types of businesses, so that also at the same time that business owner should be happy to share the profits with the people. What we have is on the other side, people don't want to share profits, and so they prefer to take debt. So we want people to move away from that. And I think generally, as a society, as Muslims especially, we really need to understand the impact of debt and how, the Prophet ﷺ warned us about debt, and he refused to lead the janazah for someone who was in debt. And he became angry with one companion who promised to pay off the debt of someone, and it'd been a couple of days and he hadn't done it. This is something that we take very lightly. So I think there's a number of things. If you're early on in your life and career, make a habit of saving money. Really, like, make it a habit. Teach it to your children as well, about saving, putting money aside. There's this kind of being frugal, not for any other reason than for the sake of being frugal, and that knowing that your wealth has a right upon you. And there's always going to be opportunities that come in life, right, for investing and making money, etc. And the worst thing is, partner, you may come across a genuinely good opportunity, but you don't have the money because you're too busy spending on X, Y, Z. So make it a good habit of budgeting and saving money, right, that you can then invest. And slow and steady wins the race, guys. And then also pushing and promoting amongst your own peer group that getting into debt isn't a lifestyle, and the severe consequence of being in debt, Islamically, right? That we don't want that. Even the shaheed, imagine that, subhanAllah, the martyr, who was supposed to enter Jannat al-Firdaus, and he can take 70 members of his family straight into paradise. He's entering into Jannah suspended if he has a debt. It just shows you the severity of it. We need to push this into society, that we shouldn't be building our lives. We shouldn't be doing Klarna and PayPal and, shortcutting our way. And that has all these other added unintended kind of consequences, which are harmful as well when you look at fast fashion and all of these things, which is creating problems in society. So we've got to move away from that. As Muslims, we have a higher standard that we adopt to ourselves. And our problem has been that we compartmentalize and we focus on one when Islam is holistic. So, when you look at finance, it's just about kind of debt now, Islamic finance, is how do we make debt halal, or how do we make Muslims richer? Actually, Islam is much deeper than that. It's how do you ensure that your neighbor doesn't go to sleep hungry? How do you ensure that people, the weakest in society, are being looked after? Right? Islamic finance is supposed to be the trigger for that, but we've just made it into something that, oh, I want to make lots of halal money, and so we've got to take a more holistic, rounded view, and that comes through educating. We've all got to be advocates for that.
Jazakallah khair. Just the last few questions. We've got a few questions on breaking into Islamic finance as an
Sure.
undergraduate student.
Yeah.
So any advice on that, getting practical experience if, companies are rejecting you, and also how would you go about it if you want to go through conventional first, etc.
Yes, I mean, look, like I said, look, if you're going to go into conventional, be clear about it. And if you're in conventional, what are you doing to supplement your Islamic understanding? So that may be kind of being part of Islamic finance clubs, being part of Islamic finance education movements, volunteering with Islamic finance organizations. You've got to do all of these things to supplement your CV so that you can jump across when an opportunity arises. If you're looking at trying to get into a role, look at all of the main firms like I mentioned, in the UK. And see if you can get an internship with them. Be willing to take an internship unpaid. When I was at university, I did 3 months. Our summer holidays were 3 months then. I did 3 months unpaid in an internship at Deutsche Bank. And I would work Saturday and Sunday to fund myself. But I just wanted the internship because I know that it put me ahead of my peers when it came to, getting a job later on. So I worked 7 days a week for the entirety of that summer for 3 months, and it mashed me up, right? I was so tired, subhanAllah, but alhamdulillah, at the end of my degree, I walked into a job when others were still struggling. So you've got to be willing to do internships as well, for it to be unpaid. If you need to, come approach all the different companies and ask them, like, if you can get paid internship, even better. But if not, then be willing to take it because it'll be worth its weight in gold later on in your career, inshallah.
Jazakallah khair. I think we can move on to some of the questions on Wahid, if that's all right with you.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, so we've got a couple questions here. So what plans of expansion does Wahid have? Any roles or areas they're looking into? And secondly, what makes companies like Wahid more aligned with Islamic principles compared to other investment firms?
Okay, so Wahid's growth strategy. Alhamdulillah, we're looking to grow. We're working on some exciting areas where we want to replace sukuk. Sukuk, for those of you who are familiar with the term, or those of you who aren't, it's like an asset-backed bond. It's a fixed income product. No good. I wouldn't ever recommend it because it replicates debt. So one of the things I did was when I joined, I said we need to get rid of this. So I commissioned some research into why sukuks are problematic. Alhamdulillah, managed to get it pushed through. And so we are coming up with a product that's genuinely Sharia compliant that is an alternative to sukuk. So we're looking at doing that. We're also working, inshallah, on listing a fund that is going to be BDS compliant, right? BDS compliant. Part of the challenge of Islamic finance is that what is considered Sharia compliant technically often is at odds with what we would consider from an ethical perspective. So, for example, Hewlett Packard. Hewlett Packard's underlying activity is producing laptops, right? It's not in debt. It doesn't have any impermissible income as such. All of its activities are kind of either printers, its hardware, technology, and so on. So it meets the technical Sharia requirements, but they're providing support to IDF, right? So I I find that very kind of unsettling that something can be deemed as Sharia compliant, but still be supporting the oppression of our brothers and sisters. So been working for the last year on trying to come up with an alternative set. Everyone who's here, make dua, please. I had a conversation with Mufti Imran Osmani, Mufti Taqi Osmani's son, to get his support around this. And we want to change the criteria for what's deemed Sharia compliant. So these are two big things that we're working on. We're continuing to expand. We're looking to go live in Nigeria later on in this year. We're currently US, UK, UAE. We've got some activity. We've got an office in Qatar and in Malaysia. We're looking to go live in Nigeria, inshallah, later on this year. So we've got kind of those types of business activities, but we're a tech-first company, so we scale digitally. So we have some openings coming up in technology. So if you're like a developer, DevOps, and security operations, if that makes sense to you, then we've got some roles coming up in that, inshallah. But other than that, it's just kind of organic growth. Until we get to a certain size, then it's hard for us to say that we're going to be recruiting lots of different roles. They kind of come up in ones and twos, effectively.
Yeah, and I think we can conclude with that, Ustad.
Jazakallah.
I think we have a um a notice about your event, in Work. Would you like to speak on that?
Sure. Just to make sure, has anyone got a question that hasn't been covered and they want me to cover it, inshallah, just in case there's any still there?
I think Abdul Basit, you have your hand raised, or let him
I feel
speak.
like doing a high five when I see that hand. Go for Abdul Basit. You have to unmute yourself though.
Sir, I'm doing PhD in Islamic Economics and Finance in Istanbul. So I want to ask about the opportunities there for me.
In Istanbul,
Yes,
did you want to go into an academic career or into a kind of finance practitioner role?
most probably academics.
Okay, so in Istanbul or generally
Uh, in UK,
in
I'm
UK?
already yes doing PhD in Istanbul.
Excellent. So I would say contact Durham University,
Okay,
Durham University. There's a professor there, Professor Mehmet Asutey.
okay, sir.
Yeah, Professor Mehmet Asutey. He runs the Islamic Finance program and their summer school. And he has a really good, I guess, anything in Islamic finance academia, kind of, he's at the center of it in the UK. He's obviously also of Turkish origin, so you'll be able to have a meaningful conversation with him, inshallah.
So what about in professional position?
Professional position is going to be harder. It's like, like I said, even though you've got a PhD in Islamic finance, you're going to have to find a role or in a specific area of Islamic finance that you want to work in. And you're going to have to start from the bottom in terms of trying to understand that from a practical level. There may be some research-based roles. Charities often commission research. That may be something that you'd be interested in. One of the other projects I'm involved in is the National Waqf, and we sometimes look at research. It'll be something like that, but not like a long-term role. The Islamic finance market in the UK just isn't at that level yet. So, where you can say, oh, just drop into any generalist Islamic finance role. Yeah, unfortunately, there's nothing like that here.
Okay, sir. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
Abdul Basit, we've shared a few links for you in the chat function for you to check out. So
Thank you.
Nice.
no worries. Yes, Ustad, if you would like to share your exciting news on faith in the workplace.
Jade Jidden. Cool. Look, if you can bring up the poster. Okay, so look, when we talk about Islamic finance, right? Our problem is that we have marginalized or we've restricted uh, Islamic finance to this very kind of dogmatic understanding of finance products and structures. Actually, in this, I was speaking with the brother who asked the question earlier about, or the sister, that do you have to work in Islamic finance to serve Allah? we really have to understand that actually everything that we do, Islam permeates every aspect of our life. When we say, Allah Azza wa Jalla tells us in the Quran, "Udhulu fi silmi kafa," enter into this religion completely. It means that we don't secularize, we don't separate our faith, that it's only something we practice when we're praying and not in how we do business, how we engage with each other. Now, for many Muslims, when you're working, there are lots of different scenarios that you're in that we don't know how do we deal with them from an Islamic perspective. The engagement with the opposite gender, right? What do? Prayer time and working. Now, it may seem like, oh, really easy. Yeah. You obviously you always pray. Like actually, sometimes maybe you're in a meeting and in the winter months, it's very close. Dhuhr and Asr, right? There's not much time. If there's a danger you're going to miss Asr, what do? What does Islam say in terms of the flexibility allowed? What happens at the end of the year when you have, and I'm going to say this because it's quite provocative, the Christmas party? Is it actually a Christmas party? If they give every employee money to be spent, are you allowed to take that money? Right? I remember once, subhanAllah, when I was working at an organization, the last day, the last working day before Christmas, they made it half a day and everyone's allowed to bring their kids in. And one brother was really strict and he goes, "Oh, this is haram. This is like, you're celebrating Christmas." I'm like, "No, not really." Like, they said that we're allowed to bring our kids in. They haven't got a church up or no one's, celebrating Christmas. Kids are enjoying themselves. And he goes, no, this is haram. And I said, okay. I said, "Are you working the full day today?" He goes, no, I'm leaving half day. And I said, "Why are you leaving half day for? You're celebrating Christmas then, if you leave half a day." How do we understand and navigate these types of issues? Say you're in a work dinner and there's someone who's sitting next to you or someone who's sitting on the other side of the table that has alcohol. Is it haram for you to eat or is it haram for you to be there? Now, in a pure sense, everyone can say, no, this is haram. But when you're having to engage and navigate this stuff, what do? Right? What does it mean to fulfill your contracts? If you're being paid for 40 hours of work, right? And let's be honest, when you've got home working, are you actually doing 40 hours? Is that money that you've earned halal or haram for you? How do we understand that Islamically, right? Your money that you get paid as pension, is it permissible? All of these things, subhanAllah, we're going to be discussing. And I'm very, alhamdulillah, very happy to say that we've got the very erudite scholar, Dr. Sahel Hanif. He's the CEO of National Zakat Foundation as well. But he's a very deep scholar, alhamdulillah, that really understands the fiqh. He understands it in a wider maqasidi perspective as well. So we've set this course up for us to go through all of these and answer questions that people may have, challenges that people may have, right? And how to deal with, issues that arise. And Islamically, what is the best way to navigate? Because you see, the believer, subhanallah, and this is in a statement of or the advice of Imam Sa'adi, he said that the believer doesn't distinguish between what's halal and haram, but he will distinguish between what's halal and what's better. So what's good and what's better. Many of us have this conversation where we're just on that benchmark between is it right or wrong, but actually how do we navigate ourselves to take us to that next level of engagement. So this is the course, inshallah. You've got the QR code up. You can have a discount there. We've only got 50 spaces for people in person. The rest of it is going to be online, inshallah. We've secured a very good venue, the Hilton Heart Hotel. And really, inshallah, it's an opportunity to come and engage, ask questions you're not sure about, and have them answered, whether it's from a careers perspective, whether it's when you're in work. Another example would be, subhanAllah, if you're a doctor, and if you're asked to do some sort of surgery, that's gender realignment. Islamically, what do? I speak to pharmacists and they're asking the question dealing with, are they allowed to sell the morning after pill? It may sound shocking, but these types of scenarios always occur. What's the framework for us as Muslims to navigate this? Inshallah, we'll be covering that. Jazakumullah khair.
Jazakallah khair, Ustad. That was a brilliant intro to the course, and I'm really excited for it. I know we said that the Q&A is closed, but there was one question that's come up a few
Yeah,
times.
Bismillah.
Right. So what our sisters asked, as a media and communication student, how can I use Islamic finance within the advertising industry? Or more generally, how can I apply Islamic finance in my media career?
So if you want to, I mean, the one thing is doing kind of media and comms for Islamic finance, and I guess it would be actually more than just Islamic finance, it's Islamic principles, is understanding, okay, what can and can't you do from a marketing perspective. So it's something I always have a go at Wahid, and I'll come back to the answer actually. Wahid, yes, why Wahid? What we've tried to do at Wahid is have Sharia integrated across the entirety of the business. So I manage risk and I've made Sharia a key risk. So even when it comes to our marketing, we say it has to get signed off by Sharia. We had, and I can be open with yourselves, we've had some issues where marketing and they're quite creative and they've gone out and done something. And I remember they did one post where I had a magician or something, and it was just light-hearted. It wasn't like, black magic and like jinns, right? It was just a post about magic tricks and investments, yeah. And we said no, it's not allowed, right? We've got a whole guidance around the types of things you can and can't do, how you use people in imagery, even the type, if you have any background noise or sound with the adverts. So these are Islamic principles, and I would say that you should look to understand them. So when you're in marketing, also, lying, yeah, the Prophet strictly forbade us from lying. But if you're not careful, you could exaggerate to the point that it becomes a lie. When you're trying to sell something, subhanAllah, Islamically, you've got to know what you can and can't say in these situations. And I'm constantly trying to say to our team marketing team, tone things down. Like don't claim certain things if you can't back them up. So as a marketing and communications person, these are areas that you should understand. And look, as a general thing, I would say whatever field you're in, like, you've got to understand the rules around it. Umar ibn Khattab, radiallahu anhu, he would go to the marketplace and he would ask all of the shopkeepers questions to do with fiqh or finance. If they didn't know the answer, he'd smack them in the hand. He said, if you don't know this, you're going to fall into riba. So all of us in our fields should really try and spend time to understand the fiqh of it, understand the rules with it. If you're in medicine, how can you not understand what the Islamic rulings of different types of medicine are when it comes to legal issues? One of the things that we want to discuss at Faith at Work is, say you're a lawyer, a family lawyer, and you're dealing in a divorce case, and you end up supporting one party over the other, and you stop them from their rights, say, for example, from seeing their children. Islamically, can you do that when it comes to inheritance law? Say that you write contracts that are against what the Sharia prescribes. How do you feel about that? Are you allowed Islamically? So we've got to understand our fields and spend time to understand Islamically. And that's why I keep on saying, learn the principles, learn the principles. Principles are better than examples because you can apply them in any context.
Amazing. Jazakallah khair for the answer. So I think it's a good time to conclude there. Jazakallah khair for the talk, of course, and for the Q&A. It's been extremely insightful. And please do take away the advice and the notes that you've received, and do share your notes, inshallah. We'll have a recording of this uploaded on our YouTube channel. As I said in the beginning, we do have a podcast that's just come out with Fad Abdu, Sheikh Fad, and on the topic of zakat, and it's really a brilliant episode, that one. Here is the link or the QR code for our IFA channel on WhatsApp. Please do scan this and follow us on WhatsApp, where you find all the updates, every single talk or event that's going to come up with the discount codes, of course. And please, yeah, we'd love for you to stay up to date with us. But I think we can end it there. Ustad, any concluding final thoughts or any advice you'd like to share?
No, really, subhanAllah, just to say that, look, may Allah Azza wa Jal bless everyone and protect everyone's income, and not to allow yourself to become despondent or like kind of down when it comes to careers and finance. really honestly seek Allah Azza wa Jal. And it may be difficult in the short term, but in the long run, you will never lose. You will never lose. Either you will gain muraqabah, closeness to Allah through the hardship, or you will achieve what you need to in this dunya. And even that, Islamically, if you look at the dua the Prophet ﷺ used to say the most often repeated dua of the Prophet ﷺ, رَبَّنَا آتِنَا فِي الدُّنْيَا حَسَنَةً وَفِي الْآخِرَةِ حَسَنَةً وَقِنَا عَذَابَ النَّارِ. Oh Allah, give us the best of this world and the next, and protect us from the fire. So have faith, have tawakkul in Allah Azza wa Jal, keep on striving hard, don't rest, don't relax, people. This isn't the time to rest or relax, especially early on in your career. Keep on looking to grow, stretching yourself. You know, any opportunity you have for learning is something that's gonna really, subhanAllah, help you in the long term. You know, we are the sum of our experiences. And the more experiences you get, the more you grow. So chase that, inshallah. And the money will follow people. And just want to say jazakumullah khair to everyone, you know, for taking the time. Apologies if I went through things quite quickly, or is we covered a lot of this before. But if you do, anyone does want to connect with me, I'm quite active on LinkedIn. It's Umer Suleman, Umer Suleman. You know, do send a connection, and I try to answer as many questions as I can, even on there, subhanallah. And if I don't, or I'm delayed, please forgive me. Jazakumullah khair.
Subhanallah. Yeah, Allah barak feek. Jazakallah khair for the profound advice, as always, Ustad. Yes,
Yeah.
as you heard, that was the advice, and do follow up if you have any pressing questions. Do connect and send any follow-up questions. But we'll end this webinar here today. Subhanakum wa bihamdik, ashhadu an la ilaha illa ant, astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayh. Thanks for joining us. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Barakallahu fi wa alaikum salam.